The white car sat in the road with its engine still running, but nobody inside it was looking at the dashboard anymore. Ahead of them, over the dark strip of FM 1485, a diamond-shaped object hung low over the pavement. It was not drifting like a plane. It was not crossing the road like a helicopter. It kept rising a little, dropping a little, and then firing a cone of orange-white flame from its underside, as if it had to burn the air just to stay up. The heat reached the car first. It came through the windshield, through the side glass, through the metal frame of the door, until the inside of the car stopped feeling like a shelter and started feeling like an oven. 7-year-old Colby Landrum was close enough to see the glow across the trees. His grandmother Vickie pulled him back toward the car, trying to get his small body away from the heat. Betty Cash stayed outside longer. She had been driving. She had stopped because Vickie told her they could not pass under that thing. Now Betty stood near the driver's side, staring upward at a shape that lit the pine woods like daylight and made the road shimmer under it. Then the object began to climb. The flame pulsed downward again. The diamond lifted above the tree line. For a few seconds, there was only the car, the road, the heat, and 3 people trying to understand what had just blocked their way. Then the helicopters came over the trees. One became several. Several became a formation. The witnesses would later describe military-type helicopters, twin rotors among them, moving around and behind the object as it pulled away from the road. By the time Betty got the car moving again, the night had already split into 2 different lives. Everything that happened before December 29th, 1980, and everything that happened after. Betty Cash was 51 years old, a businesswoman from Dayton, Texas, used to being the person behind the wheel. Beside her was Vickie Landrum, 57, a friend who sometimes worked around Betty's restaurant and who had her grandson Colby with her that night. They had not gone out looking for anything strange. They had gone out looking for a bingo game. The week between Christmas and New Year's had emptied the usual places. The small halls they checked were closed or getting ready for holiday events or simply done for the evening. After a while, the search turned into dinner. They stopped near New Caney, ate at a roadside restaurant, and started back toward Dayton. Betty took Farm to Market Road, 11485, the road running through the piney woods northeast of Houston. On a map, it does not look like the end of the world. It passes towns, creeks, fields, pockets of houses, and the dark edge of Lake Houston country. At night in 1980, it could narrow down to headlights, tree trunks, and the empty lane in front of the hood. The car was a 1980 Oldsmobile Cutlass, white, low, and ordinary, the kind of car that made sense on Texas roads. The heater was on because the night was cold. The windows held the blackness outside. Colby rode in the back. Vickie sat in front with Betty, watching the road open and close inside the headlight beams. The first light did not arrive as a monster. It showed through the trees, bright enough to notice, distant enough that the mind reached for normal answers. A plane, a helicopter, maybe a fire, maybe lights from something happening off the road. They kept going. The light grew larger. It did not remain fixed in one place above the horizon. It moved lower. It came toward the road or settled across it, depending on which account is being followed, but the effect inside the car was the same. The thing ahead was no longer scenery. It was now part of the route. Colby noticed it. Vickie noticed it. Betty kept driving because there was still road in front of her, and because at first a driver keeps driving while the mind tries to name what the eyes are seeing. The closer they got, the harder the normal answers became. The glow was too large. The motion was wrong. The road ahead was no longer just dark asphalt between trees. It had a shape hanging over it. Vickie told Betty to stop. Betty hit the brakes hard enough that Vickie lurched forward. Later accounts describe her hand leaving a mark in the dash. The stop itself was abrupt, and the reason for it was right in front of them. The object was low over the road. The witnesses described it as diamond-shaped, wide through the middle, tapered top and bottom, metallic or dull grey under the glare. Blue lights or pale lights ran around its centre in some accounts. Underneath it, a flame blasted downward, then faded, then blasted again. Each pulse seemed to lift the object. Each pause let it settle. The road under it glowed orange. The trees on both sides caught the light. The inside of the car changed temperature fast. At first, the three of them tried to make sense of it from where they were. The car had stopped far enough back that Betty was not directly underneath the object, but close enough for the heat to reach them. The windshield did not keep it out. The metal did not keep it out. The air inside the Cutlass thickened and warmed until it was no longer just fear making them sweat. Vickie was a devout Christian. She was not sitting there waiting for a UFO. When the object blocked the road, her mind did not run to little green men. It ran to the end of the world, to religious terror, to the sky opening in a way she had been taught might one day happen. Colby was a child in the back seat, watching adults fail to explain what was directly in front of the car. Betty opened the driver's door. The outside air was not relief. The heat was stronger out there. She stepped near the front of the car, looking up. The object hovered above the road and the flame poured down again, bright enough to flatten the shadows under the trees. Betty could see the shape. She could hear the mechanical pulse of it, the beeping or roaring sound reported in later accounts, the sound folding into the blast from the underside. Vickie and Colby did not stay outside long. Vickie got the boy back into the car. Betty remained out there a little longer, caught between the need to run and the need to understand what was hovering over the only road home. The object did not land. It did not open. Nothing stepped out of it. It simply hung there, burning the air. Then it began to rise again, slowly, as if every foot upward had to be paid for with another burst of flame. Betty turned back to the car. The door handle was hot. Betty reached for the door handle and found that the car had changed while she stood outside. The metal was hot. In later tellings, she either burned her hand or had to use cloth or a sleeve to pull the handle open. Inside, Vickie was trying to keep Colby calm. The heater was off now. The witnesses later described the car itself as too hot, the dashboard and metal surfaces holding the heat, the air around them made worse by the thing above the road. Betty got behind the wheel again, but she could not drive forward yet. The object still occupied the lane ahead. It rose and settled, its bottom flame bright enough to make the road look exposed and unreal. For several minutes there was no clean decision. Backing up on a dark farm road with the object in front of them was one kind of danger. Driving forward under it was another. Getting out exposed them to the heat. Staying in trapped them inside a metal shell that was warming around them. Vickie kept Colby close. Betty watched the road. The object finally began to move away from them. It lifted higher than the trees and drifted off, the pulsing flame still visible underneath. The road in front of the Cutlass opened again, but nobody in that car could treat it like an ordinary road anymore. Betty started forward. They had not gone far before the sky changed again. At first it was a sound and movement above the trees, then shapes appeared, dark against the glow and night sky. Helicopters, more than one, more than a few, coming in low enough and numerous enough that the witnesses could count them instead of merely sense them. Some were described as the large twin-rotor type, like CH-47 Chinooks. Others were described as smaller single-rotor helicopters. The exact count shifts by source and memory, but the number most often repeated is about 22 or 23. 3 people seeing a strange light can be trapped inside private fear. 3 people seeing a strange light with a line of military-style helicopters behind it now have a second problem. The sky is no longer just unexplained, it looks organized. Betty kept driving. The object and helicopters moved away from the road, but the witnesses did not lose them immediately in every telling. Some accounts have them seeing the light again from a different stretch of highway, far enough away to count more clearly, the helicopters surrounding or pursuing the bright object as it moved across the night. The car continued toward Vickie's house. Betty dropped her and Colby off. The boy had made it home. Vickie had made it home. The road had let them go. Betty drove the rest of the way alone. By then, the headache was starting. The helicopter part did not fade after the witnesses got home. It followed them from living rooms to investigators to government offices to court filings. Vickie later described large helicopters with double rotors. UPI's 1985 archive coverage carried the witnesses' claim that the object left accompanied by about 23 military-type helicopters. NICAP's archived material and later UFO summaries repeated the same general picture, a diamond-shaped object over the road, then a large number of helicopters moving with it or after it. The witnesses did not say a helicopter landed in the road. They did not say soldiers walked up to the car. The machines stayed in the air. They formed the moving frame around the object as it climbed and left. That made the next morning harder to dismiss inside the family. If Betty, Vickie, and Colby had only seen a light, the account might have stayed inside the car with them. The helicopters dragged in pilots, fuel, maintenance, orders, airspace, and a place those machines had to come from before returning somewhere else. The problem was that nobody official would take ownership of it. The witnesses thought of nearby military facilities and airfields. They thought of the army because of the twin-rotor machines. UFO investigators later searched for helicopter records, asked around, and collected accounts from other people who said they saw helicopters that night. One account on the Unsolved Mysteries page comes from a law enforcement officer and his wife who described low military-looking helicopters moving in the same general direction. Still, the line did not trace cleanly back to a unit. Air Force channels denied involvement. Army channels denied a matching operation. The Marines and other possible operators were brought into later discussion because Chinooks were not unique to one branch in public imagination. But no confirmed operation stepped forward and said, yes, those were ours. The witnesses had gone from a hot car under a strange object to an even stranger absence. Machines that looked military, a number too large to be casual, and no record that resolved where they belonged. That absence followed them harder than the light. The light was gone by morning, the bodies were not. Betty reached home sick. The symptoms did not unfold like a clean movie wound. They came in pieces. Headache, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, skin that looked sunburned even though the exposure had happened on a cold winter night, eyes swelling, face and hands reacting first because those were the places the heat had touched most directly. At Vickie's house, Colby woke up during the night thirsty and ill. He had been a child in the back seat, close to the fear but less exposed than Betty. Vickie had symptoms too, including nausea, skin irritation, eye trouble, and discomfort that did not vanish with sleep. Betty was worse. By the next day, the red patches had deepened. Blisters appeared. Hair began coming out. Her face and eyes swelled. The woman who had stood outside longest now looked like the encounter had followed her home and kept burning after the light disappeared. Within days, she was hospitalized. Different summaries handle the medical record with different levels of certainty, and the cautious version is still bad enough. Betty was treated for serious burns or burn-like symptoms. Later accounts described radiation poisoning or radiation-like injury. Some reported medical opinions connected the symptoms to radiation, infrared, ultraviolet, or heat exposure. The lawsuit itself framed the danger as radiation from the object. The court never proved the source. The body did not wait for court. Betty lost hair. Skin peeled. Her eyes swelled shut in some accounts. Her life after the encounter became entangled with doctors, hospital visits, investigators, and the simple practical problem of being sick after seeing something nobody could officially identify. Vickie and Colby suffered less severely, but they were not untouched. Colby had stomach pain and eye problems in later summaries. Vickie reported lingering symptoms. The three did not come away with a neat piece of wreckage or a photograph that ended arguments. They came away with the memory of heat and a list of symptoms that arrived too soon after the road. For Betty, the road divided her life. Before it, she was the one driving home after dinner. After it, she was the woman trying to get somebody to tell her what burned her. Betty eventually contacted John Schuessler, an aerospace engineer and UFO investigator. Once he started interviewing them, the road became a sight instead of only a memory. Schuessler and others interviewed Betty and Vickie, went back over the route and collected what the witnesses said they had seen. The car, the road, the tree line, the direction of travel, the reported objects, the heat, the helicopters, each piece became part of a file. The site itself produced one of the stranger follow-up claims. On the Unsolved Mysteries page, Schuessler described being shown the area where the witnesses believed the object had hovered, and later seeing or being told of road surface damage that looked heated. The account says the marked area was later removed and replaced with new asphalt by people in unmarked trucks. That part has to stay where it belongs, a reported investigator claim, not a proven government admission. First the car stopped, then the people got sick. Then an investigator went to the road, then the road itself was said to have changed. Other witness accounts gathered around the edges. Some people reported helicopters, others reported a strange object or light. A Dayton area officer's account placed low helicopter traffic in the wider region that same night. UFO archive summaries mentioned Jerry and Naomi McDonald and other names tied to object or helicopter sightings, though each of those has to be weighed through the sources that preserve them. The official trail narrowed around the helicopters. Lieutenant Col George Sarin of the Army Inspector General's office is described in the NICAP Rickett Hall material as investigating the military angle. In that account, he found the main witnesses credible in describing what they believed they saw, but could not connect the helicopters to any Army, Guard, or Reserve unit. The same material notes the scale problem, a normal holiday season exercise involving that many aircraft would leave some kind of logistical trail. No trail solved it. The Air Force denied that its helicopters were involved. The Army did not produce an operation that matched. Other agencies and branches did not step into the record and take responsibility. The file kept growing without becoming an answer. It had named witnesses, it had a date, it had a route, it had a lawsuit, it had symptoms. It had a helicopter count large enough to demand records. It had denials where records might have been. It did not have the one document Betty and Vickie needed, a signed admission that the thing over FM 1485 belonged to somebody who could be held responsible. By 1985, the account had moved beyond UFO circles. UPI carried it as a legal fight in Houston. Betty Cash and Vickie Landrum had filed a $20 million lawsuit against the federal government. Colby was part of the claim through the encounter, though the UPI headline focused on the two women. Their argument was direct. If the object was a government craft or under government control, then the government had failed to protect people on a public road from dangerous exposure. The government answered from the other side of that missing link. It did not have to prove what the object was. It argued that the plaintiffs could not prove the United States owned or controlled it. Without ownership or control, the government could not be held liable for what happened on the road. U.S. District Judge Ross Sterling was reported as reviewing written arguments connected to dismissal. The courtroom language was cold beside the road that brought everyone there. A woman says she was burned. A child gets sick. Helicopters fill the sky. Years later, the fight becomes a question of control. Who controlled the object? Who controlled the helicopters? Who had a duty to warn? The answers never moved far enough for the witnesses. The suit failed. The government did not compensate them. No courtroom produced a confirmed craft, a flight order, a radiation source, or a unit commander explaining why a formation of helicopters was over the piney woods that night. Betty and Vickie walked out with the same central gap they had walked in with. The road had happened. The illness had happened. The official chain of ownership had not. For Betty, the years that followed were marked by recurring medical trouble and the weight of trying to be believed. She died in 1998. 18 years after the night on FM 1485. UFO sources and public summaries connect her decline emotionally to the encounter. The careful record can say that she lived with severe reported health problems afterward and never received the official answer she wanted.
A white car stays on FM 1485. A woman is still driving home after dinner. A grandmother still has a frightened child beside her. Ahead of them, in the account they carried for the rest of their lives, a diamond-shaped object hangs low over the road with flame under it, heat inside the car, and helicopters moving above the trees. Then come the hours after it: illness, doctors, investigators, a public lawsuit, government denials, and the failure to trace the machines the witnesses said they saw. Betty Cash, Vickie Landrum, and Colby Landrum were real people. The lawsuit was real. The UPI archive exists. The source pages record the names, dates, symptoms, and legal fight. The government did not admit ownership of a craft. No court established the source of the alleged radiation. No official record has turned the helicopter formation into a solved military exercise. The trail returns to the same dark Texas road, with the car stopped short of something too hot to pass under. In one version, the object was experimental and somebody lost control of it. In another, the witnesses misread a chain of ordinary events through fear, heat, and illness. In the version that kept Betty pushing for answers, the sky burned above FM 1485. Helicopters came after it, and the people closest to it paid for the rest of their lives without ever being told what they had touched.